evening.
First, I just want to say that I'm very elated to be here. So it's so wonderful to see so many of my students, my colleagues, some of my old educators, and we're here celebrating something very, very grand. So I'm very happy to be here, and it's been a wonderful program so far. My student Brandon, who's over this program, he invited me, and I was very grateful that he gave me the invite, and very grateful to accept. And I almost, told him, he got me in a hard spot because it's Wednesday night, I go to church, but he asked me what was I doing after school, and I told him not much, but I thought he was meeting immediately after school, thinking he needed tutoring or something like that. But then, he said about 7 o'clock, but then, he told me that they had, I think, Michelle Obama and Oprah slated to come, but that something came up. And he said that I was the only person on that same caliber with those ladies, around here. So I said, okay, hey, I'll do it. But seriously, I just wanted to say thank you to the pastor of this church and to Brandon for allowing me to come and speak on something that I really love. It's very exciting for me to do what I love. I teach, I write, and to speak on the importance of education, because I know how important education is. I'm sure a lot of you all know how important education is. But we have kind of gotten away from the importance of education, and I think we do a great disservice and dishonor and disgrace to Dr. King's legacy and a lot of the other pioneers, their legacy and their life work, because we have kind of been very negligent and nonchalant about the power and the purpose of education. And just want to get you all to participate with me a little while. I'm not going to call on you, but if you can just register with me by raising your hand if you can, if you agree or you answer the question. But it is just so important that we realize and we go back to the importance of education. It's not a wonder that the United States government came up with programs such as Head Start, and came up with programs such as child nutrition assistance in the form of free breakfast for everyone, and so many other vouchers and that kind of thing. It's not totally about building somebody physically, but in the early years of a child's life, we should understand that the cognition and the brain development a lot of times is linked to nutrition. So that's one reason right there we can see, or by one means that we see that education is very important. It's not necessarily that they were so engulfed with building a child physically, but they understand that in a child's first years, if they don't get the proper nutrition, their brain's not going to develop properly, and they can kind of be behind in the rest of their life as a result of that. It's no wonder that in third world countries, young people struggle and walk miles to get to school, and they sit in schools that are not heated or air conditioned, and they sit on floors, and there are things flying around, and they're there because they understand the importance of education. It's no wonder that we fought so hard to come up with clandestine plans to teach each other when we were slaves, and to learn to read and learn to write, because we understood that the importance of education was the great equalizer and not an isolator. Now we might use education to kind of isolate ourselves and say that I've arrived, I have these degrees, I'm lettered. But really, education is truly the great equalizer. It's the difference between a question I ask my students a lot of times when I open my class. Okay, what is the difference between rich and poor people? What is the difference between haves and have-nots? Does anybody here know the difference between rich and poor people? Raise your hand if you think I'm not going to call on you, don't be scared. There's the difference between rich and poor people. Okay? Anybody know? It's not money. Okay? The difference between haves and have-nots, raise your hand if you think you know it. The difference between unsuccessful and successful people. What's the difference between those people who flourish and those people who languish? Okay? It's not money. It's not what family you come from. It's education. It's what you know and what you do with what you know. Okay? The difference between rich and poor people is not money. I know custodians that live well, and I know doctors who are broke. Because it's not money, it's what you do with money. It's what you think about money. Okay? So education is so important, but we've gotten away from that. In this world, there are no excuses now. Okay? In the United States of America, there are no excuses. You can learn anything, go on the internet, go to the public library, and you can get there. Because education is the great equalizer. No matter where you come from, no matter who you are and what you have, you can go and obtain education. You can read a book on how to do something. Okay? In the Bible, when it talks about us, that God will give us houses we did not build. Okay? That's kind of a metaphor for reading. I can read a book in a couple hours and learn what it took somebody a lifetime to learn. That is the great equalizer. And so education, we have to get back to understanding how important education is, and not just understanding it, because a lot of us understand it, but we have to communicate that to our children, communicate that to other adults that are around us, because education is the great equalizer, not the grand isolator, not to make one person better than the other, but it puts us all in the same playing field because we have access to the same education. Back when we had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marching, and we had Frederick Douglass, and we had Booker T. Washington, and we had Malcolm X. Those different philosophies, we can learn something from all of them. I agree with Booker T. Washington that says that we need to be vocationally inclined, be able to work so that we can produce wealth. But I also agree with Du Bois that says that we should be knowledgeable in the arts and knowledgeable in the different languages and know how to conduct ourselves in different spheres and different circles. They're both very valuable, different philosophies, but they're all a part of education, okay? I agree with Malcolm that said that we should have our own. We should be financially and economically stable enough to sustain our own. But I also agree with Martin that says iron sharpens iron. We need to be around other people of other races. That's why we fought so hard for Brown versus the board. Okay? When I teach things in the class, or I teach things at church, I like to take a different angle. A lot of people think we just fought for Brown versus board because it showed that we were on the same level with the Caucasian, that we were not inferior. But Brown versus board is to say that we need to be around other people, because it doesn't mean that I'm better than you or they're better than us. It means that we're different, and they can learn something from me that I don't see in my circle, and I can learn something from them that they don't see in their circle, or vice versa. I kind of twisted that up. But what is learning, what is education? It's when you open your mind and you receive something that's foreign or new to you, okay, and it causes you to be different. And so if you're in the same circle, I've heard people say that if you're the smartest person in your circle, you need to get some new friends, because you will never learn anything if you're the smartest person in the circle. Education is the great equalizer. It's the difference between rich and poor, the difference between successful and unsuccessful. No excuses. There are no more excuses. If I tell my student that it's great to wear Nikes and Polo, but it's even better when you learn how to own Nike and Polo. You can buy stocks in it, and whenever your friends buy Nike and Polo, you're getting richer. That's the difference between rich and poor. The rich people teach their kids to own, poor people teach their kids to buy and consume. It's just education. Education on so many levels. I'm not necessarily talking about formal education in a college or university. That's great, that's grand. But non-formal and informal education. Those are the things that separate the haves from the have-nots. And so it is our charge, those of us who know, my colleagues in here, my teachers in here that I see, those leaders that are in this church, the young man that is in my class that's a leader at this church, a leader in this community, and a leader at Albany High School. Those of us who know better, we have to show better so that others can do better. Am I right about it? Yes. Okay? This teaching, educating. Education is so wonderful because it gives everybody a chance. Everybody's on equal playing field. And I truly mean that. There are different things we do, and we do it because we're not educated. When a preacher comes up and he says, let the church say amen. Amen means I agree, or it is so. What am I agreeing to? Or when people are leaving church and they throw their finger up, what is that about? I'm not at church with my slave on. I'm not asking for permission to go to the restroom, so I don't do that. And I'm bringing more attention to myself. But people do it because we are uneducated. Education does not necessarily mean sitting in someone's class. We have to educate each other daily. There are